able to see and hear me. So welcome, my name is Scott, and welcome to Performance Pivots. I know how busy your days are, so I really appreciate the time that you're spending with us today. You're not going to have to look at my ugly face all day, but I wanted to sort of connect with you that way for just a little while anyway, as we get started here. So thank you very much for joining us. You've got the background information. This is a GoToWebinar platform. So on your right-hand side, as I look at my feedback monitor, you can ask questions, and throughout the workshop, I will be happy to field those questions for you and do my best. But here's my first question for you. We'll flip it around a little bit. So, if you're calling in from the West Coast, it's a little bit early, but I know we've got folks from all over the United States and Canada joining us today, so a lot of different time zones. What is your biggest challenge right now as a solopreneur, as somebody who's running their own shop? I mean, you are where you are now. You want to you've got a vision that's going to take you to a certain place. What is your biggest challenge now? And if in the question box or the chat box right now, you can sort of put down, what that might be, so that I can get a sense of, who's on here and what we can actually talk about. Okay, Mark, thanks very much. I'm seeing qualified leads, seeing time management. Okay, one even being honest, with cash flow. That is very cool. That is very cool. Okay, that's a good place to start. All right. So let me just get back to our slideshow here. Okay. There we go. So being a solopreneur, and I'm a corporate trainer, I have clients around the world, but I am also an entrepreneur, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me later, just so you know who's at the other end of the phone. I hate talking about myself. I'm not very good at that. So, but as a solopreneur, there's so much to do in your business days, and this workshop is called Performance Pivots. And Performance Pivots means that we can do slight alterations to a variety of our habits in our daily lives, both professionally and personally, and have a huge increase in profitability, productivity at the other end. The hard part is being a solopreneur, there is so much to do, and there's so many choices. I mean, how many of you know that, generating leads, making those calls, those new relationships, the ones that most people shy away from, are the ones that often get put on the back burner unless you're really feeling it. I mean, we shy away from things like that. We can get caught up in less, busy work, administrative work, things that we rationalize that are really important to do. In short, in some times we don't make the right choices for our business. And, the businesses that I usually work with are somewhere between 3 and 15 million in size, and they're led by startup entrepreneurs like yourself. They run these businesses, and I see them, sweeping the floors. I see them, taking care of some filing, administrative stuff, and those are not the high yield activities that we want to really be focused on. So the other challenge that we have as a solopreneur too is, and you can put up your hand here too, is how many of you feel like sometimes you're operating in isolation, that because you're not going into a work environment where there's colleagues and peers, and there's a momentum, there's an energy going here, and a boss that's actually talking about accountability to hold you there. It's really up to us. I mean, I was having dinner last night with a friend who runs a printing business, and his sales are down about 30 or 40% year over year, and I'm asking him why, and he says, I haven't had time to find out. You haven't had time to find out why your business is down, because we tend to sometimes can put our heads down the gopher hole and sort of try to ignore the bigger pictures that are going on. We can always be busy. The question is being busy with the right things is what we want to really take a peek at. So those are some of the challenges of being a solopreneur. In the question box too now, can you put down, what are some of your challenges? We've talked about getting qualified leads. I heard you there, William. We've talked about time management. Someone said cash flow. With these sort of 4 points in mind, what else is holding you back from getting your business to where you want to go? Yeah, Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Too, keeping up with technology, absolutely, a huge thing that a lot of people actually struggle with, and that's actually one of the power pivots. Is we're not covering or performance pivots. That's not what we're covering today. But I've put together a PDF file that might have some information on that. So, what I really want to take away from here, you to take away from here, is you're just a few degrees of separation that if you can take, there's a total of 11 performance pivots. If you can take 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to start with and actually start applying them, you're going to start seeing some significant differences, both in terms of how you feel about your business and actually the hard, balance sheet, income statement, profitability, hard line items that we often take a peek at. Those become your performance pivots. So I'm going to take my face off here. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to you. I'm going to just sort of do this, if that's all right with you for a second. Who am I? I'm an educator and a trainer, and uh, I've been doing this outreach client engagement for a long time. I've created online academies for professional sports leagues, for military organizations, and I love what I do. I love seeing people's eyes and lights go on, especially when they're brave enough, courageous enough to go out on their own and make something happen. I mean, you've got your book of clients, right? You've created that book of clients for yourself. And even if you're working as part of a firm, you have to have your own book. I remember being recruited out of university 30 years ago, 35 years ago, to go work with a large Canadian insurance firm called London Life. And them sitting me down and saying, listen, this is not something where all of a sudden you get clients. You have to create your own book. There's a certain courage that it takes to actually go out and create your own clients in your book. So I really get the headspace from a solopreneur perspective. I have some sense of the insurance industry. Just one second here. There we go. I have some sense of the insurance industry. My first entrepreneurial venture was to create a company called Speaking of Wildlife. And Speaking of Wildlife was an endangered animal sanctuary that took in abandoned circus animals, abandoned exotic pets, and we raised funds to do rehab work with them. And as you can see on your screen there, we've got Amber the mountain lion up on top. She was seized in a drug bust in a downtown of a major city, and the Humane Society came in and said, I'm not sure what we can do with this. And that's the niche we filled. We took care of these animals, and in turn, we did endangered species presentations. Some of the best work I've ever done, in terms of my professional life, I got to work with the likes of Dr. Jane Goodall, who's a chimpanzee lady, Dr. David Suzuki, who in Canada here's a big environmentalist. But one of the cool things was, as a business, I had to go get liability insurance. So imagine me coming to you. Imagine me coming to you and saying, listen, here's what I do for a living. I take these animals and snakes and owls and wolves, and I go visit schools, and I do endangered species presentations. Well, you could imagine the challenges of trying to get liability insurance for that. And of course, you have to have that. And I remember the way I had to go about getting liability insurance was to meet the regional director of a large insurance firm for lunch. And I brought Amber, the mountain lion that you see up top, to have lunch with us in this restaurant, and she just simply sat on the table and had lunch with us. And it wasn't until this specific senior VP said, this is okay, we can do this, and was able to write me a policy at that time for $5 million in liability. So certainly get that headset about what we're about. I am a performance coach. This is what I've been doing for 15 years, either through my work with published author as well, in terms of writing books, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just trying to give you a sense of where I come from. I've got a very deep background in terms of expertise in helping people identify performance habits, performance pivots that they can be doing the right business, they can have the right approach. It often just becomes a matter of execution. Okay, so I heard a beep beep here. I'm just checking for questions here. Okay, okay, good. And you can all still hear me. Just wanted to make sure I didn't lose you along the way. All right. So back to our slideshow here. There we go. And as you talked about before, there's this technology piece is a fun one to have. So let's get into the reason you came here today. The 5 performance pivots that I can share with you, that if you take any one of these or multiple of them, you will notice a difference, and you'll start noticing a difference tomorrow. One of the promises I did make to you, though, was that at the end of the webinar today, I would be more than happy to share with you the ebook on performance pivots, and it will be attached as a file, a PDF file, just towards the end of our time here together. Okay, so performance pivot number 1 for you. So I'm going to poke and prod here. Do you have a crystal clear vision of what business looks like for you, what success looks like for you 3 years from now? Forget the 5 years, but 3 years from now, do you know what your vision is? Because if you don't have that concrete vision, and the vision could be something in the lines of, it could be, I'd like to be having, $2 million in underwriting. I want to have, my own income of 150,000. I would like to be working 3 days a week. You need to have a very crystal clear and compelling vision for you going. Otherwise, what you get is this: you get busy work. And how many of you have had weeks where you've been just so busy, you come to the end of it and you're sort of like, yeah, okay, it feels okay, but I'm not getting what I want to do. And that's generally because if we don't have that crystal clear vision, our day-to-day activities get guided by what's happening on a day-to-day basis and not on what we're actually going long term. So in other words, we start doing things that have low yield for us. We're busy, we're burnt, we're spent, we're active, we might even be smiling an awful lot, but if we don't have that vision, and the vision is usually quantifiable in terms of something that's really important to you: freedom of time, freedom of having enough in the bank account to do what you would like to do. Okay, so good way to test yourself. You're in the insurance business. Does this still get you excited? Does your business get you excited? And if not, what can we do about your personal vision to make you excited within that vision? What is it that really sort of gets your crank going? Is there a specific niche of insurance that you really like to specialize in? Is it time freedom that allows you to do that, so that if you work really hard, for those 3 days a week, you can have those 2 extra days to go sailing, hiking, whatever it is you like to do? The first performance pivot always for any business is go back to basics, go back to the structure of what you want to do. And 3 years from now, what does success look like, and how do you know you've actually achieved it? So you got to have it something measurable. So get clarity around those things. Okay, so if I was to ask you in the question box, how many of you got a crystal clear vision of what you would like to have 3 years from now? Forget about next month, forget about this year. What would you like to have 3 years from now? Type it in the box and be as specific as you can. Is it something for your kids? University fund, travel fund for you, vacation home, boat? What is it that actually would get you excited? And the hard part is, a lot of us get so busy in the day-to-day stuff. I talk to many business, I have no idea. They say, I have no idea what really gets me excited anymore. I'm just too burnt to even think about that. Well, if you stay in that state, then you'll always be busy, you'll always be operational, but you'll never be strategic. Okay, so for your vision here, you need to have that personal mission. What is your mission in life? I'm not talking about your business necessarily. I'm talking about what is it you want to get out of your life, and does the business vision that you have for yourself help you get that? So you need to get clear on that. How does your life spell out? I don't know if you're 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, or whatever you are. Different ages, different personalities. We all have those different missions for ourselves. My mission is to help as many entrepreneurs as I can to be successful in what they like to do. That juices me. Your juice might be, there's so many people going around unprotected with not the right insurances that they're really one step away from actually bankruptcy, which ruins the whole family and can provide a significant setback. But you need to get clear on what it is for you, okay? The second thing about your vision is you got to distinguish between the short-term nice to haves, which is, let's say I'd like to have, income, and I don't know what your income level is, that I'd like to have 10,000 or 15,000 in income this month. Okay, those are short-term nice to haves. That keeps us going. but you can't use them always in your vision, your focal point, and forget about the long-term must-haves that you have that actually pertain to what you would like to have out of here. And so those long-term must-haves, let's say, for example, you're writing a lot of policies, you're really busy, but you can't get to that level you'd like to. Why can't you get to that level? Well, it's because you're doing so much admin stuff. Not only are you getting the clients to sign on the dotted line, but by the time you've done all the processing and things like that, you've lost a lot of sales time. Therefore, you're getting in way of your long-term have. So the short-term have was to have all the cash in the bank. You don't want to spend money, for example, on an administrative assistant or any kind of support. But in the meantime, you are now, doing $20 an hour jobs when you should be focusing on higher things, higher yield activities. Okay, the long-term must-haves need to be in your sight. The other thing you need to do for a vision piece is a vision is not sort of A to B, and then once you hit B, you celebrate it. Yeah, I got my $300,000 income, and boy, wouldn't that be really nice? Whether it's 100,000, whether it's 60,000, I don't know where you're playing at. But the key thing for your vision is to celebrate along the way as well. Because if you wait until you actually have that goal, that can be a long time. 3 years can be a long time. So I hope you're taking the time that when you get a new client on, when you renew policies or you expand, if you're say doing personal insurance and you go from life insurance to disability insurance, those kinds of things as well. I hope you take the time to celebrate along the way, because as a solopreneur, we need those celebrations as well. It's not like we have an office of people around us going on and having those kind of celebratory things. You need to be able to celebrate along the way and include other people in your celebrations. I hope you have a bit of a posse that you celebrate with, and we'll talk about that one next. So performance pivot number one is, what is your vision? Get clear on it, what it is, and then make sure your daily activities support that vision. And again, today's webinar is a very short type of piece, so we're giving you very high level kinds of activities on here. Power pivot number two, and we'll take questions after I get to number three, is the power of your posse, the power of the people that you hang with. And it's been proven time and time again that you are the average of the 5 people you hang with the most. So how does that feel for you? Think about the 5 people that you hang with the most. And are they the ones that you are going to get you to your current, the place that you'd like to go? I remember that book that I wrote, I showed you a couple slides ago. I was driving a gentleman who I brought out to speak from Toronto to Vancouver, and I was driving him back to the airport, and we got stuck in Vancouver traffic. It was rush hour. So we're sitting there in the car, and I've got the copy of my book wedged in between the seat. And his name was Bruce, and Bruce runs a company called G Adventure Tours. They do about 150 million a year in boutique adventure travel companies, one of the clients. And he said, can I take a look at this book because we're stuck in traffic? And I said, sure, Bruce, go ahead. And he said, I'd like to give this book to someone that I sit with at the Toronto Raptors basketball game. I said, go for it. The more I can get around, the better. He said, yeah, this lady's, her name is Heather Reisman. Now, Heather Reisman, if you don't know, she's the president of now Indigo, but was then Chapters Indigo. I had been trying to get my book into Chapters Indigo for months, and I had to go store by store. Bruce took that copy. A month later, I was coast to coast in Chapters stores, Indigo stores across North America because of that contact. The power of your posse is almost, you can predict a projectile of somebody's career based on who they actually hang with. So in your mind right now, get a sense of which, who are the 5 that you hang around with the most? And are they the people that are going to get you to that vision that we talked about in the performance pivot in the first one, your vision? Are these people the ones that are going to have, or is it time to evolve? And posses need to evolve, and we're not necessarily talking about your family or friends. We're not going to even touch that. But in terms of the business folks, the ones that you network with, can you reach forward and actually, upgrade? There's a gentleman who took finance, and he wanted to get a mentor to upgrade his posse. So he drove to Berkshire Hathaway office in Omaha, Nebraska, and wanted to meet Mr. Warren Buffett. This gentleman camped out for 8 days, 8 whole days in the offices of Warren Buffett, waiting to meet him. And every day he'd come in, pressed in a suit, sit down, and the admin assistant would say, "Do you have an appointment?" He would say, "No, I will wait till Mr. Buffett can see me." And it took him 8 days. Finally, on the 8th day, Mr. Buffett, Warren, came out and said, "I'd like to meet the gentleman who thought it was worth 8 days of his life to actually meet me. Come on in." That gentleman's name, it is significant. His name is Michael Lee Chen, and he founded a AIC mutual fund. So if you're in the financial sector, which you are, you should be aware of that. And at one point was the 20th richest man in the world. Talk about the power of your posse. Go out of your way to find people who can really help you move your business forward, okay? Does your current posse, do they have the skills and the connections you need to get what you want? And if they don't, you can think about, promoting, demoting, spending more time with certain individuals and getting out and connecting with people that can actually open the doors for you. We are creatures of habit, and networking, as insurance agents is generally something that we have to do. The question is whether we are good at it or not, and that's another performance pivot for another time. But you need to get out and put yourself in front of people that can actually open the doors for you. Okay, so let me pause there for a second. We've talked about vision, and we've talked about the power of your posse. Questions that you might have. Okay, they're just being typed in now, so just bear with me for 1 sec. Okay, this one's specifically about networking. So they're asking about, networking. How do you network effectively? And that depends so much on the situation that you're in and how much time that you actually get. But here's the piece that I always come back to, is EQ, the emotional quotient. If I meet you at a social event, am I likely to first hear about how I don't have enough life insurance or I should be covered by disability insurance? Okay, and hopefully you're not doing that kind of thing. EQ, the emotional quotient, means that you want me to remember you for something favorable that actually helps me. And what we tend to remember an awful lot are quick little anecdotal stories. Okay, that quick little connection piece where you ask a question about them and you're not even thinking about business at this point in time, because success, generally speaking, at an initial networking meeting is to start that relationship. Okay, so back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it would be all about, here's the business card, what kind of insurance do you have, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see the glaze come over people's eyes. Now, if they ask you about insurance, go for it. But if they're, if you're at a social event and they know you're an insurance person, the last thing they probably want to talk about right away is insurance. They need to get to know about you, trust you, have a little stories, and get beyond you, the insurance agent. Okay, again, it's a much deeper evolution than that, but EQ, as opposed to your product knowledge, is what usually carries the day at networking events. And then once you've met somebody there and you've exchanged business cards or contact information, follow up with an email that actually gives them some value. It's not necessarily a direct pitch, but give them some value, get them involved in a client engagement sequence. Okay, hopefully that helps you out a little bit. All right. So performance pivot number 3, false emergencies. Oh, how many of you have had these? For false emergencies are where things get blown out of proportion time and time again. I have a client who's with the military organization, and every time they call me, it's just sort of like, Scott, we need you now. And at first, I was very receptive to these kinds of things because I wanted to help them out. But, it would be for adjusting a PowerPoint presentation or, something very minuscule. They just operate on that constant adrenaline Q1 urgent time frame. And when you do that, you actually take away the ability to think of things in a longer term environment. So for false emergencies, we can blame something for this. We can blame push information. I mean, when you take a look at your emails in the morning, take a look at all the websites, we get over 15,000 marketing messages every day that our brains have to process. So when they have to process that much information, if something isn't paid attention to quickly, people get out of whack, they get distorted, they get very aggressive, they get intense very quickly. So we can blame push information, but you don't have to take the responsibility for other people's intensity. And what we're going to teach in this performance pivot is actually how to sort of train the folks who come to you with these constant sets of emergencies so that they don't do that. Because usually what it is a misinterpretation of situations. It could be by you and by others. Think about something that's probably already happened today that might have looked, rather urgent, but, in hindsight, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, and that's usually the acid test that I give it. If this doesn't correct itself, am I going to remember 2 or 3 hours from now? Or am I just caught up in that, that freight train? It's not even a freight train anymore. It's an electric train going 500 kilometers an hour, that if something doesn't sync up right away, do I get my nose out of joint? So we want to make sure that we have that balance inside of us, because we are now still thinking strategically, and we're not going to use up all our energy on low yield activities. And we want to get away from things that we have a false heightening of importance. People come to you with something that is really urgent, and it may be urgent from them because their boss had it really urgent. So what could that be in the insurance industry? Somebody's had a claim. And of course, you don't probably don't handle those claims directly, but you want to make sure they have those kinds of abilities to get a claim handled right away. That is not a false emergency. That is an emergency. A contract that has to have an addendum on it and done by 4 o'clock at a certain time. We just want to make sure that we don't automatically assume all the urgency that other people are giving to us. So to reduce the number of false emergencies that you have, just remember, you are not responsible for others' misinterpretations. And if we could stop now and you could do this, I'm done. I think you're going to have incredible success if you can stay in a strategic mindset as opposed to something that's just always just busy, busy, busy. You are not responsible for others' misinterpretations, and that can stem to family and home as well as your work environment. So when you do get somebody coming to you and it's in an urgent situation, take a moment and think about it. And 9 times out of 10, it's not really urgent. It's just they're caught up in that mode. Respond with empathy, but don't mirror their intensity. Okay. And what that really sounds like is, hey, Ron, I hear what you're doing. You know what? I'm going to get to that, as soon as I can. And if Ron says, but it's got to be done now, and, you can actually have those kinds of conversations. So Ron, I've got other things going here. If this isn't done for now, what actually happens? And you start putting up some soft buffering walls for Ron to actually start to think about things before he actually brings them to you in that urgent sense. I mean, have you done this with anybody already? I bet you already have on an unconscious level. But when somebody comes to this, the idea is to get them not to come to you in the first place, if they can at all handle the information going forward. Okay, so what do you get out of this? If you can take that stress, the cortisol rush, the adrenaline rush away from 4 or 5 hours out of your day, what does that give you in return? Yeah, a lot more balance, and again, a lot more strategic thinking so that you can actually take actions that move towards your long-term vision. Okay, that's performance pivot number 3. This one you would like, because several of you have said, you would like to actually, get qualified leads. There we go, just getting a bit of a drink here. Client engagement sequence, your performance pivot number 4, a client engagement sequence. Now, client engagement sequencing, hey, it's a fancy word for marketing. That's what it is. It's a fancy word for marketing that goes from where you make an initial touch point with a client till you actually make them a client, till you make them a lifelong client, because that's the sequence that we're actually looking at. And it's not what it has been. So when I hear people saying they'd like to get qualified leads and things like that, I hear you. The way about going to get qualified leads and to build those relationships has really changed over time. There is so much noise in the market space that for you to actually get through to somebody, to actually get their attention, you have to be providing value early on in your piece. So when you're talking about, getting qualified leads, somebody who's, in that specific situation for a specific type of insurance, has the, can see themselves, making way to pay the premiums and sees the value insurance, that's what you would like to have. But there's so much noise to get through to those people that what you often need to do is help them self-select. And the way you do that is by actually providing some value up front in your client engagement sequence. So if we were doing this workshop, even 10 years ago, the number of touch points to go from a initial awareness to a client sale was around 5 to 7. 5 to 7 touch points. Look at the numbers there now. 15 to 17 points of contact before the average person in a B to C environment will make a decision about whether they're going to purchase something or not. So if you're coming out of, they don't know about you, they've just met you, that type of thing, your job, yes, you want to have them as a client, obviously, but you have to work harder to get them to that space. So two things. One, when you like to hear you have qualified clients, I hear that. The other thing is it may take longer to get to that place where they can actually become a qualified client, because being a qualified client in part means that they actually believe in what you're actually offering. And because it is so busy, it's hard to get their attention. I was on a Zoom call here about an hour ago with a client out of LA who runs a big business. And to get a hold of this person, to get them focused even for 15 minutes, they're signing, a $70,000 contract for services. It took 3 weeks to actually get that point. It's an urgent thing for them, but they just couldn't get to the computer to actually have a 15-minute conversation. So I think as salespeople, we need to be more patient as one. Number two, we need to be able to provide a client engagement sequence that doesn't sound like, oh, there's Carolyn. She wants to still sell me insurance. Okay. Every time we contact the client, we have to have some value add that goes into that. So when you're thinking about that, think long-term relationship. Qualified client may not be qualified today, but may be qualified longer. Again, long-term vision. So if you had somebody who came in today but is not qualified to buy from you this month, what happens to them? What happens to them in your client database? Do you have an activation sequence to get them back in touch with them? Do you have them on an email sequence so that you can push out some video or articles that might be useful for them? 5 tips to protect your family while on summer holidays this season. In terms of pieces along the way. And that becomes a really important piece. So think long-term relationship with the client and EQ specifically. And again, from an insurance perspective, what value can you offer each time you contact a client? What you don't want to do is just get in touch with them and say, hey, we talked about the life insurance, the whole life insurance that you might have. I just want to remind you. Okay, that kind of sales piece is really dinosaur. That is really dinosaur. You can ask them about that, okay? But what you should be doing is adding some value along the way. And the way you can actually add extra value too is, I'm not sure if you've done any of this yet, it'd be really neat to see in the chat lines. Have you gone on to a program that provides video email? So instead of me getting a text email with a lot of policy kinds of information, what you can do, I think one of the applications is Bonjoro, and you can put a video email so that I get to see your face. I get to actually hear you speaking my name, and that has a deeper connection than something that's just textual based. So what we have to do is be creative about what's going to be value for the client. Okay. And understand as you go through this, and for a lot of people, because technology has revolutionized so many people's businesses, what used to be based on customer service, technology in some ways has commoditized what we sell. We need to make sure that we understand which touch points are more valuable to our client as we go through. So, is it that sense of, you need to ensure your earnings, because did you know that it costs $40,000 a year to put your child through university? Okay, and what that actually means if for some reason there's an interruption in income. Have you taken it from putting it in a text flat sheet, a one sheet, and have you put together videos? Short, very organic videos that help people see you so that they can understand that you actually know what their problems are. Okay. So client engagement sequencing is a huge piece in terms of getting those qualified leads and building your funnel. Whether you're broad basing it to social media, things like LinkedIn, and doing some data mining in there because it can be rather effective. If you're selling B2C insurance or whether you're selling B2B insurance, there are different ways to go there. Let me pause there for a second and see if we have some questions that we can answer on that. Questions on client engagement sequence. Okay, as you see this clicking around, it's just because I'm reading the questions here. So thanks for your patience on that. Okay, so the question is, where again to find these qualified leads, and in terms of what you're trying to do. So the question is finding those qualified leads. You want to have a large personalized fishnet is what you'd really want to do. You want to be able to have something that whether it's a mail list that you actually have that you now can become not just a provider of insurance products but an educator of insurance products that people want to read and keep up on or watch the videos that you actually produce, because that really creates trust over the long term. And I may be, a year or two out, because I'm not having kids for a couple of years, I may be a year or two out to really getting a sense of how important life insurance is. You'd like to be able to have that option or that ability to connect with clients all the way through that, so that when they do go bang, there's no other person that they're going to consider because they have that relationship with you. Okay. All right. And our fifth performance pivot for today. We've talked about business all the way so far, but this one we're going to finish off with depreciating your best asset. So in your business, what is your best asset? I mean, really, what is the most valuable thing in your business? And of course, it is you. We're talking about you. And we often think about ourselves, in terms of working harder and all those types of things. But there's habits that we have personally that affect what we bring to the table each and every day when we get to do our business. Whether we sleep well, we eat well, we exercise, all those kinds of things. And what I hear time and time again from business owners is, I don't have time. And I say, well, then in that case, you probably like burning money, don't you? Because when you go to a client meeting, a business development opportunity, and you're tired and you're not sharp, you haven't got your relationship self on here, you're burning money because you're going to really decrease the opportunity of closing business with that deal. So, we oil the machines, we upgrade our computers. We have to do the same thing for ourselves. We got to make sure that we actually take care of ourselves. And, what we usually find when we talk about this kind of thing is people go, you know what, I just don't have time for this kind of stuff. And when we actually dig down into it, once we get through the self-defense mechanisms, we usually find that a lot of business owners are working on less valuable activities, things that, that keep them busy. That's great, it keeps them busy, but they're not the ones that are actually generating activities that will actually go towards their own business. So what can you do? Well, there's 17 pages of this, but we're down to 3 points for this one here, okay? Number one, sleep, okay? Sleep and unplug. Every night you should be going to bed, and you're gonna go, Scott, there's no chance I'm doing this. I'm gonna stop listening to you now. Well, you do so at your own peril, because even Navy SEALs, some of the most trained, specialized, have to perform accurately people in the world. Performance falls off by 30%, even after 2 or 3 nights irregular sleep. They'll go on their 36-hour stay awake missions, but they crash for 3 or 4 days before they're productive again. So if you're one of those folks, because I only need 5 or 6 hours of sleep, you may be one of the anomalies, and you may have trained your body to do that. But what you're when you go to sleep, what actually happens is your brain gets scrubbed. You get rid of all, it's like a computer RAM chip. The RAM gets cleaned out. It gets a fresh plate for you for the next day so that you can handle that heavy lifting that goes on. So sleep becomes that important thing. And again, that 6 to 8 hours regimented. I'm going to sleep by 11. I'm up at 6, I'm up at 7, whatever I'm doing, that's what we're trying to get to. And because of technology, and I think technology was actually mentioned by Carolyn, a little while ago, is one of those things we have to unplug. And here's the hard thing: is you can't have your cell phone by your bed. You can't watch and binge on Netflix before you try to go to sleep, because that glow of the screen messes with your mind. It impedes the production of melatonin, which allows you to go to sleep. So what do we do instead? We start taking pills to help get us to sleep. And it may or may not work, but we end up being in a medically induced state. One of the things, if you're looking to be successful in your business, and I'll drive this right back to your business, is you need to take care of your sleep. You sleep and you unplug. And when you get in the morning, please do not reach for your phone right away. The phone is nothing more than somebody else's to-do list for you, okay? You don't need that. The best stuff has to come from you. The vision stuff that you have when you get out of bed in the morning. Take some time and just meditate, have some relaxing music, get into the swing of things. Don't have all this push information come at you right away. It's just not good for you. You may be an adrenaline junkie. I am, okay? I love being busy. But for that first half hour, you know what, you're not getting near me with anything, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. It'll still be there from 30 minutes from now. So sleep and unplug. Number 2, exercise. Gosh, in 2 days from now, 3 days from now, there's this big races called the Tough Mudders, and you may have heard of them. I'm going to do my 10th. I'm 56 years old. I'm doing my 10th on Saturday, and I am sold on how much exercise increases the quality of work and my energy levels through the day. And so what I hear on the other side is, Scott, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. Well, if you don't have the blood flow going, as soon as you get the blood flow going, I'm not talking about going to the gym for an hour every day. I'm talking about you shouldn't be at your computer for more than an hour at a time before you get up. You go for a walk, you get some exercise, you do some deep knee bends, a little bit of yoga, whatever it is that works for you. You need to get your blood flowing. And then 3, 4, 5 times, if you're a rock star, you have to get to some form of intense cardio exercise every week to get that blood going. And that's basically the equivalent of saying, you know what, I'm going to run my business on a 1995 Windows laptop. You're just not going to have the capacities to do it. You're letting a whole bunch of potential energy go to waste when you don't take care of yourself in terms of exercise. And the really cool thing about exercise is you can still think about your business. You hop on the elliptical, you go for a bike ride. All of a sudden, solutions that you couldn't see when you're in your box at work or in your car, etc., you get the blood flowing, you get fresh air going through your body, solutions actually begin to present themselves. And the stresses that you were feeling in the day, the ones that you thought were insurmountable, all of a sudden seem to have solutions coming to them. So exercise is an absolutely key thing. Okay, you are your fuel for your business here. You got to take care of yourself. So whenever I go into a client's place, they always want to talk about the sales strategy, the cost-cutting measures, the cash flow processes, and all those things. And those are right at the top of the list to get things done. But because they're trying to grow their business, and I presume because you're listening here that you would like to grow your business, we got to take a look at the fuel that feeds that. And if you're coming in, washed out, I mean, what was it? Elon Musk was sleeping on the couch in his Palo Alto auto manufacturing plant. I had a chance to visit that a little while ago, and just absolutely spent. And I think they were $2 billion further in debt over the last quarter. Not saying, I'm just saying that's not the way you want to do it, okay? You want to make sure that you actually take care of yourself so you can have quality mental time along the way, okay? And Daniel Pink has a great book, on time and sleep and sort of times in the day that are best to actually do. Daniel Pink was the name, P-I-N-K, and talks about how, if you need to do heavy mental lifting, do it in the morning. Try to keep that social media and push information out of your brain for as long as you can in the day. Okay, so those are the five performance pivots we have here. As we get towards questions here, I just wanted to let you know we have a complete online course of performance pivots, and we covered 5 at a very high level today. There's a total of 11 before, and if you're talking about technology, for example, there's untangling technology. We also have a performance pivot, not just a performance pivot, but a course, a complete course that you get if you decide to take this offer. And again, this is just a gentle lob towards you. It's on professional selling and negotiation skills. So if you have challenges with qualifying needs or overcoming objections or how to present properly in this day and age using technology, for example, this is a great piece to pick up on, because each one of the videos is about, gosh, I think they're about 20, 30 minutes long. And this one here, we're talking about how, whether we're investing time or we're actually spending time. And they come with examples that are really designed not towards the corporate environment, but towards the solopreneur, how we can actually make those things happen. Now, I do apologize. My face isn't particularly handsome ever, but certainly not in this the screen capture kind of thing. But this is a really great thing to have in your back pocket if you want to actually, take these pivots that we've talked about today and actualize them. And we can't forget that we know a lot of things. What we don't do sometimes, a lot of the times, is actually take action. It's all about the execution. And you need some support to actually execute some of these things, specifically, if you're in that solopreneur market space. So this course is one of those things that you can have in your back pocket to have available to you. So the details of that course is regularly, $220. That's Canadian dollars for those in the Americans. But because Insurance WebEx is asked, said, can you make it a good deal for our folks? So we've taken 40% off, 132 Canadian, or it's less than $100 US. So to have all the 11 performance pivots in there. And as I mentioned before, also included are the 6 key stages of professional selling. And that's my background is professional sales, so I really understand the headspace that you are actually in. So to do that, it's available for the next 48 hours, and you will be receiving, you should be receiving an email at the top of the hour with details on the offer. If not, there's a link here too that you can actually grab and take a look at that, or just email me with any questions that you have. So again, the offer is next 48 hours. It's all 11 performance pivots, and it's all the feedback I've had on the courses. It's really skookum stuff. It's drilled down, useful streetwise stuff that people like to have. Okay, enough said on that. Contact information for me if I can ever help you out. If you just want to have a quick chat or email chat about something that is a pinch point for you in your business, because we all have different kinds of pinch points, and I respect that I haven't been able to get to everyone's today. I do apologize for that. Just we are limited by time. Please feel free to reach out to me here and ask questions. But we have about 5 minutes left for any remaining questions. So let's go, and if you can, in the question box, ask any questions you'd like to have answered. Okay, first question is, which one should I actually start with first? Well, the first, there's two. So we'll make this a real easy one. One is that we want to start with make sure we have a clear vision. And we've talked about that. But number two, and we didn't get into this one today, is how we spend our time and where we invest our time. And really what we need to do is make sure we are investing our time and not spending our time, that we're going into high yield activities as opposed to daily routine kinds of things. And as an entrepreneur, we've talked about how we have to wear a lot of different hats. But for a sales perspective, for example, we should have 3 or 4 days every week where we have 2 or 3 hour slots where we are just faithful to actually reaching out to new people, creating new networking opportunities. And we do this in a time and place where we feel really good about ourselves and we get ourselves in that proper state of mind. Those are the things that are going to drive your business growth. Yes, we love it when people just drop on our laps and we have contracts and clients come and find us, but we can't rely on those types of things. And once you actually have somebody, you've made a contact and you have permission to email them, you now can start owning that relationship. You can nurture that relationship. You can feed it value through the client engagement sequence. But the first thing you want to do is get clear for yourself that if you're successful at what you do, what's it going to take you to? Where do you actually get to go? Okay, so that would be the first one that I'd take a peek at. Next question is, the exercise piece, I've tried it. Life gets in the way. I'm traveling. I've got clients, visits, and all those kinds of things. That's, I hear you. Getting to the gym regularly on a regularly set schedule is a tough thing. Think of this though. How about micro exercise? Okay, micro exercise does not mean you have to change your clothes or your gear or anything like that, but doing desk squats and just getting out for the walk. If you work from a home office, for example, ride around the block on a bike, hit the treadmill for a while. Give your brain a break and get your body actually activated a little bit. So it does not need to be on a regular basis. From a full-on gym perspective, I still think you need to do that, but you really, and actually we have a fitness expert coming on to our podcast on Friday. So you've got my email address. If you'd like to get hooked up to that email list, we'll be talking all about how do we as business people stay fit in an environment that actually keeps us busy all the time. All right, guys, I think that is the time that we have. Thank you so much for your questions. I really enjoyed meeting you. Please reach out again too with contact information that if I can help you out in any way, and great business development. Wonderful industry. Take care. Hope to see you again soon. Cheers.